The year was 1941. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was president. A gallon of gas cost 19 cents. How Green Was My Valley won Best Picture at the Oscars. And the Andrews Sisters released a musical hit that was sweeping the country called Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy.
Bugle Boy of Company B.
This was also the year several families of Philadelphia's West Oak Lane Jewish community established a new conservative congregation called Temple Sinai. The Aron HaKodesh was built in a neighbor's garage. A Torah was borrowed, and the synagogue opened its doors. Those first doors belonged to the local American Legion post in West Oak Lane for the High Holy Day services. The new congregation decided to set a fee of $5 for what would be called sustaining memberships. Soon, Temple Sinai was growing rapidly and moved to a rented former food market on Ogance Avenue in Washington Lane to accommodate the growing congregation. Now, in search of a rabbi, a young JTS seminary student was interviewed by the name of Sidney Greenberg.
He was called for an interview, which was held in my parents' house. He returned shortly after that with his bride-to-be, Hilda Weiss, and introduced her to the congregation. Without a doubt, Rabbi Greenberg and Hilda were both accepted by the congregation immediately because of who they were and how they were.
And just like that, Temple Sinai had a full-time rabbi. By the fall of 1942, more than 250 congregants attended Rosh Hashanah services and worshiped together with Rabbi and Hilda Greenberg in their new spiritual home. The wisdom of this decision to welcome Rabbi Greenberg to Temple Sinai soon became a bond of harmony, affection, and respect between rabbi and congregation.
Rabbi Greenberg and Hilda were like family. They lived 2 blocks away from our home in West Oak Lane, so we were also neighbors. Hilda was his right and left arm and everything else about him. They were a beautiful, beautiful couple, and they epitomize everything about the synagogue that's good.
Rabbi Greenberg's tenure at Temple Sinai proved to be a testament of trust. Over the 50 years he served as rabbi of the congregation, he never had a contract. He would say, "Look, if I'm unhappy, you won't want to keep me. And if you're unhappy, I wouldn't want to stay. So let's just leave it alone, and we'll see how it goes." And guess what? It went very, very well. When he returned to the congregation from his army service in 1946, Rabbi Greenberg was even more committed to preserving our Jewish identity following this tempestuous time in the history of our people and the changing world. The year was 1946. Our rented building had sold, our congregation kept growing, and Temple Sinai was ready to expand. Following a successful campaign, which included selling bricks door to door, Rabbi and Hilda Greenberg made it their mission to raise not only funds, but awareness about this very special congregation. The response from the community was overwhelming. A groundbreaking ceremony was held on January 26, 1947, at the synagogue's new official home on Washington Lane and Limekiln Pike. By Rosh Hashanah of that year, services were held in a damp, unheated building with tarps serving as the fourth wall. Despite the less than ideal conditions that night, a capacity crowd shivered in the cold and recited the Shehecheyanu, thanking God for having sustained them and for bringing them to that day. By April 1948, a cornerstone laying ceremony was held. Funds were low, but in the words of Rabbi Greenberg, whenever we suffer from a deficit of funds, we draw on our extra reserves of faith. And that the community had plenty of, as they shared simchas together, produced plays, raised tzedakah, performed mitzvot, and watched their community grow and prosper. In 1951, the new school building was completed. It was built for 800 children to fill, and to fill 800 children with a love of Judaism. This year also coincided with the arrival of our beloved cantor Nathan Chaitovsky and his wife Beverly. The cantor, who was born in Lithuania, is among 3 generations of Chazanim in his family.
Chazan Chaitovsky, he was, no pun intended, instrumental in teaching us the adult service. We learned Nusach through him.
Cantor Chaitovsky was an icon at Temple Sinai. He served on the pulpit for 50 years, and to achieve that length of tenure is truly extraordinary.
I had the privilege of being bar mitzvahed back at the West Oak Lane Temple Sinai in 1959 with Rabbi Greenberg of blessed memory and Cantor Chaitovsky, who I still see at Shabbat all the time, singing in the back there when they carry around the Torah. Incredible man.
Now, with the 1950s winding down and our esteemed clergy at the helm, Temple Sinai not only grew in numbers and in strength, but also in influence and reputation throughout the conservative movement. While Temple Sinai was thriving in its West Oak Lane location, it was the 1960s and the suburbs were being developed. A group of Temple Sinai families soon became residents of Upper Dublin Township. There, they joined with other families in the area to provide their children with a Jewish education and were called the Suburban Temple of Montgomery County. Simultaneously, Temple Sinai was seeking to establish a branch for its many members who were moving into the suburbs. And in 1965, the congregation purchased a 7-acre site on Limekiln Pike and Dillon Road for a grand total of $42,000. This included a farm building that served as the Suburban Sanctuary and school.
It was a house. It was a little awkward because there was a living room, a dining room, bedrooms.
The Hebrew school met in the farmhouse. It was tiny, it was intimate, it felt really good.
I taught a group of 7-year-olds in the farmhouse, and that is how I started on the staff at Temple Sinai.
In February of 1967, the actual merger of Temple Sinai with the Suburban Temple of Montgomery County was consummated. Also that year, another merger occurred in our congregation, the wedding of Nancy and Stuart Goldsmith on June 10, 1967, the last day of the Six-Day War.
My parents, Nancy and Stuart, were married by Rabbi Greenberg and Cantor Chaitovsky in 1967 during the Six-Day War. And although they were celebrating such a mitzvah, Rabbi Greenberg had pulled them into his office to let them know what a serious event was happening in Israel at the time.
Not only did Israel triumph that day, so did the Goldsmiths, as they now look forward to celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary next year in conjunction with the anniversary of the reunification of Jerusalem. As we started a new decade, the decision was made to construct a school building at the Dresher site. Soon it was time for Temple Sinai to move permanently. The blueprints were drafted. Ground was broken on September 16, 1977, at Limekiln Pike and Dillon Road, and the many months of construction began.
If I had a hammer, I'd a hammer in the morning, I'd a hammer in the evening, all over this land. I'd a hammer out danger, I'd a hammer out a warning, I'd a hammer out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land.
By 1978, the sanctuary was completed, and Temple Sinai officially moved to its present location with a processional of our Torahs down Limekiln Pike.
So one of my special memories is when Barry carried the Torah from the old building down Limekiln Pike, Ogons Avenue, to the new building, and his picture was in the front page of the paper. And we still have that copy of that particular photograph.
When we left the old Temple Sinai building at Washington Lane and Limekiln Pike and walked down Washington Lane to Ogons Avenue, it was almost as if we were reading from the portion Lech Lecha, leaving our homeland, so to speak, but going to a place that God would show us. And in fact, we arrived in Dresher, same weather, and continued the journey through to the new building where we put the Torahs back into the Ark sanctified the moment and began our new life in that location.
In March of 1984, Ramat El Congregation of Mount Airy merged with Temple Sinai. The auditorium in which we are celebrating this evening bears that congregation's name. Temple Sinai continued to grow. The Ann Newman Preschool, first under the direction of Flossie Albert, and then Ellen Walters, served more than 175 children. The religious school, under the direction of Faith Rubin, had an enrollment of close to 500, including Hebrew High School and United Synagogue Youth programs. In 1996, Rabbi Greenberg retired from Temple Sinai, and Rabbi Howard Addison became the congregation's senior rabbi, serving with passion and great leadership until July of 2002. Cantor Stephen Friedman began his tenure in 2001, and I was engaged to lead the congregation in the summer of 2002.
I remember when I was interviewed for this position, there were some very difficult questions. One of which was, if we hire you, Cantor Friedman, what are you going to do to maintain the traditions that Cantor Chaitovsky established here? If you're looking for a Cantor Chaitovsky clone, I'm not your man. If you're looking for somebody who's going to come in like a knight in shining armor riding on a white stallion to change everything up, I'm not your man. I'm going to respect the traditions of this congregation, and I hope that at the same time the congregation will be open to the traditions that I have established during my career as a cantor and also during my lifetime as a Jew.
Our goals haven't changed in 75 years. They are to instill a greater understanding and love for Judaism and the rich culture present in our own congregants and their families. We also are dedicated to L'Dor Vador, generation to generation, as we commit ourselves to shaping a vital Jewish future for our children.
So many friends we have met through the years, especially in the nursery school, and believe it or not, we are still friendly with them, and they will be here tonight to celebrate the 75 years.
Temple Sinai is really the center of conservative Jewish life in Upper Dublin, and both Jackie and I feel and have felt that it's important to support the synagogue, and so we have for close to 40 years.
When we were young, I don't think we realized what a role it played. The synagogue, the friends we had there, of course, the rabbi, the leadership, and so on. And when you're young, you don't realize that. You don't have time to stop and realize what an impact it has on you and on the rest of the Jewish community.
And how can you expect your children to embrace Jewish life if they don't see you doing that? Then, it can't just come from going to Hebrew school. That's how we show our Judaism, is through being involved.
Many of our members are second, third, and even fourth generation Temple Sinai families.
The tapestry was created by members of the sisterhood. My grandmother, Mickey, was the proud owner of the huppah scene in the middle of the tapestry, and my great aunt was one of the blocks on the bottom. The special thing for me is that every time I walk into the synagogue and I see that needlepoint, I feel that my grandmother is with me. And that's generation to generation.
Mazel tov, Temple Sinai, from the Kaplan family.
Speaking for my wife, Shira, our two daughters, Tamar and Hannah, and myself, I can tell you that our love for this congregation continues to grow. This evening, as we celebrate the impact and the legacy of our congregation's 75 years, we have this opportunity to reflect while embracing wonderful things to come. I would liken our congregation to a tree, one with multiple branches that grow in many directions, but our roots are still the same as they were 75 years ago when they first took hold.
It is a privilege and a delight to sit here with the B'nai Torah. We study together, we learn together, and we would like to offer a wonderful blessing for you this evening. And it ends with the words, La'asok b'divrei Torah, praising God for the privilege and for the mitzvah of study. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen.
Sometimes we don't know the true value of a moment until it becomes a memory. So be sure and stop. Treasure every moment tonight. Value it. Return to it as you consider how much Temple Sinai means to you. Using the principle of gematria, in which every Hebrew letter has a numerical value, we see that the number 75 equals the Hebrew word bitachon. Bitachon can be translated as strong, secure, confident, and hopeful. What better way to reflect on Temple Sinai's 75 years? We will remain strong and secure for ourselves, hopeful and confident for future generations to come, because we are a life-affirming people. L'chaim.